I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. And the time is 5:32. Item 2A, Level 3 Employee Grievance pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. At the request of the grievant and her representative, this grievance will be heard in open session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074. This grievance is being conducted under Board Policy DGBA Local. This is a stop, look, and listen presentation. The board will listen impartially to a presentation by the grievant. Only those documents considered and issues raised at prior levels will be considered by the board at this meeting. Ms. Catherine Brindell, did I pronounce that correctly? Thank you. And her representative, Mr. Tom Cummins, will have 10 minutes to address the board. The representative for the administration will then have 10 minutes to address the board. Board members only will have the opportunity to ask questions of Ms. Brindell, Mr. Cummins, and of staff members. Following questions by the board, Mr. Cummins will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement, and the administration will have the same. The administration will be represented by Ms. Shyla Witten. Will the staff members in the room that are here to respond to questions from the board regarding this matter please state your name and position?
Shyla Witten, Executive Director of Human Resources.
David Gracia, Senior Director of Risk Management, Benefits, and Health Services.
Hope DeLimas, Campus Principal for Windcrest Elementary.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Cummins, you may begin when you're ready. You'll have 10 minutes, and Ms. Thompson, the board secretary, can give you a 2-minute warning if you wish. Would you like that? Yes, please. Okay, so at 2 minutes, we'll give a warning. So whenever you're ready to go, you are free to begin. All good.
Thank you. Mr. Byers, members of the board, thank you for providing us the opportunity to be heard regarding Ms. Catherine Brendel's grievance following her being assaulted in September of 2023. You were provided a 246-page booklet to wade through. To get a true picture of what occurred, I hope you have read the transcript from the Level 3 hearing. This grievance is about the district administration violating state law and school board policy that states, quote, an employee of the school district was physically assaulted during the performance of the employee's regular duties is entitled to the number of days of leave necessary to recuperate from all physical injuries sustained as a result of the assault, unquote, for up to 2 years. Ms. Brendel was the second grade teacher at Windcrest with 14 years of experience. A student in her classroom was extremely out of control on a daily basis. Ms. Brendel could have removed the student from the classroom utilizing a state law, but chose to keep him as she felt she was the best teacher to work with. In September of 2023, the student assaulted Ms. Brendel, saying, "I'm going to F you up," as he wielded a large book, smashed it against Ms. Brendel's head in the temple, ear, and jaw area. This is the most dangerous part of the head that is subjected to trauma. A hit in the temple can cause death, a hit in the ear can cause hearing and balance problems. She was also punched in the abdomen and the left arm. Ms. Brendel was treated for her wounds from the attack that very day. Ms. Brendel was determined to continue teaching and return to the classroom the next day. She made every effort to continue teaching, but after 2 weeks of trying to teach with pain, she realized she could not continue and requested assault leave, as per state law and district policy, to try to recover from her injuries. She requested assault leave for the following impairments: concussion, tinnitus, which is a ringing in the left ear where she was hit, severe headaches with pain radiating down her neck and spine from the area where she was hit, problems with equilibrium. She was hit on the ear, which affected her balance. Chronic dizziness, again associated with the hit on the ear and a lingering effect of a concussion. Jaw pops and slides from the area where she was hit, accompanied by painful spasms, which have required her to be on a soft food diet to this day. Acute sensitivity to bright lights causing headaches. Acute sensitivity to loud noises causing pain. Other long-term effects from the concussion. Ms. Brendel is required to take numerous medications as a result of the assault. This, plus the stress of recovery, resulted in a 3-day hospitalization due to over-medication and her losing consciousness with extremely low blood pressure, which now has to be monitored several times daily. Her primary doctor now oversees all medications. All agree that Ms. Brendel suffered a concussion, which is an injury to the brain and requires time to heal. What the district will not recognize is that a concussion may have both immediate and long-term effects. The long-term effects were confirmed by Dr. Stephanie Heffel on March 25th, 2024, which is page 101 in your booklet, in which she states, quote, post-concussion syndrome with migraines, myofascial pain, left jaw, and PTSD. This report was submitted to the district. Some of the long-term effects Ms. Brendel suffers from and are typically caused by the concussion are difficulty concentrating, disturbed sleep patterns, depression and anxiety, irritability, light and noise sensitivity, and she has an inability to drive because of the great amount of medication she's required to take. There are numerous doctor evaluations showing Ms. Brendel is still suffering from injuries. I would like to review the August 16th Texas Workers' Compensation Work Status Report, in which Dr. Rafeth Karashi, who was neither the district's doctor nor Ms. Brendel's, states his evaluation of the effects of the assault. His conclusion is that she may return to work with restrictions due to the injuries of the assault. These restrictions include limited standing, no climbing stairs or ladder, no overhead reaching, no driving or operating heavy equipment due to medication for pain muscle problems, no running, and no bright lights or loud noises. Those conditions haven't changed. In fact, there's a January 7th report from Dr. Karashi which states the same thing. Furthermore, the district in their level 1 and 2 decisions on page 46 are relying on a false assertion that states a Dr. Brylowski examined Ms. Brendel, while in fact he did not. This caused the State Commissioner for Workers' Compensation to throw out Dr. Brylowski's report and ordered another doctor to do the review. Yet the district continues to use this report. What has been the district's reaction to Ms. Brendel's condition? A few months after the incident, the district harassed and bullied her by cutting off her pay, requiring Ms. Brendel to file a grievance. Grievances are almost always stressful to a teacher and not helpful when one is recovering from physical injuries. Ms. Brendel won the grievance, had her pay and benefits restored, but then in March 2024, she was again removed from assault leave. Her pay, health insurance, and other benefits were removed. That is also her status today. Then the administration moved to terminate her. The administration stated they could not meet the accommodations needed, the ones that I just read to you a little bit ago. But the point is, Ms. Brendel is entitled to up to 2 years paid leave to try to recover from the injury she sustained while assaulted doing her job. Stopping her pay and benefits and moving to terminate her totally contradicts the intentions of the assault leave statute. She served the district well and was unfortunately injured through no fault of her own, yet she was punished. Furthermore, even though the district has an assault review committee, it never met. There are no records of meeting dates, times, or notes as revealed by an opens records request. Mr. Gracia, in his level 1 decision, claims that the district has supported her in her recovery, but there has been no real support other than that which is forced. They have been entirely unsympathetic to her condition. Ms. Brendel is submitted to stress while she is trying to heal physically. To increase the stress, the district...
2 minutes.
Thank you. The district has constantly required doctor examination after doctor examination. They've ignored a directive from the State Workers' Compensation to restore her. The district is sending a message that it will not support teachers when they are injured doing their job. The administration is perplexed by her request that the district support her. For beginners, the administration could simply ask, "How are you doing?" That could be followed by, "What can we do to help you heal?" One would think that would be automatic, basic, caring human questions, but they haven't been there. Can Ms. Brendel return to work? The answer is no. The simplest reason, as you can see in the doctor restrictions on the reports. The concussion caused sensitivity to light, which causes headaches, and sensitivity to noise, which causes pain. The district says they have no position for an employee who has sensitivity to light and noise. So she should be allowed to remain on assault leave as she tries to recover. That is the whole point of the law. Consequently, Ms. Brendel requests, 1, a retroactive return to assault leave, effective from March 18th. Restored pay and benefits for all days that assault leave was denied. Support from the district during her time of recovery. Reinstatement of health insurance and any other benefits to which she would have been entitled, and that all harassment and bullying would stop. Most importantly, Ms. Brendel wishes to return to teaching and has wanted district to support and assist her in returning. Instead, she has been harassed and bullied week after week. We ask that this stop immediately so she may concentrate on healing without the stress the district has imposed. Please vote to support her healing by placing her back on assault leave with full pay and benefits retroactively. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cummins. Thank you, Ms. Brendel. So now the administration will now have 10 minutes to present. Ms. Whitten, would you like a 2-minute warning?
Yes, please.
Okay, you may begin when you're ready, and Ms. Thompson will give you the 2-minute warning.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. We acknowledge that this is a difficult situation for Mrs. Brendel, and we understand the importance of supporting employees during challenging times. However, based on the available medical documentation and the standards set by law, we assert that the denial of the reinstatement of assault leave was appropriate. In our decision-making process, we were mindful of the compliance with applicable law and district policies as they are interpreted and applied to all employees. Mrs. Brendel alleges that the district has denied her right to qualify for assault leave beyond March 17, 2024, based on Texas Education Code Section 22.003B and Board Policy DEC Legal. I want to emphasize that the language in the statute has made clear that the assault must be a physical assault and the injuries must be physical. The term recuperate is not defined in Texas Education Code. However, in Harper versus Northeast Independent School District, the commissioner has held that in determining the statute's meaning, the first resort is to the plain and common meaning of the words, Supreme Court case Powell versus Stover. According to Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary 10th edition, page 978, recuperate means to get back, regain, to regain a former state or condition, to recover health or strength. Hence, the phrase means the number of days of leave necessary to recover health or strength from all physical injury sustained as a result of the assault. Additional days would be needed if the job could not be done because of the injury, returning to work would worsen an injury, or if additional days would facilitate the healing process. Furthermore, the language in statute states that on investigation of the claim, the district may change the assault leave status. The district does not dispute that on September 8, 2023, Mrs. Brindle was physically assaulted by one of her second-grade special education students with a soft-cover textbook that measured 1.5 inches thick, weighing approximately 3 pounds, and the student punched Mrs. Brindle in the left upper extremity and abdomen with a closed fist while she was performing her work duties. On the date of the incident, Mrs. Brindle was out a half day and seen by Dr. Salvato at the Texas Med Clinic. Dr. Salvato diagnosed Mrs. Brindle with a contusion of the head, contusion of the stomach, and contusion of the forearm. And based on her assessment, Dr. Salvato released Mrs. Brindle to return to work effective September 9, 2023, with no restrictions. During a follow-up appointment on September 22, 2023, Dr. Salvato released Mrs. Brindle to return to work with the following restrictions: no loud noises, no bright lights, no reading. The district was unable to accommodate these restrictions in Mrs. Brindle's role as a classroom teacher or in any other position in the same professional capacity. Therefore, Mrs. Brindle was placed on a continuous leave of absence. As a result of the continued treatment and the same restrictions being identified, Mrs. Brindle requested and was granted assault leave for 6 months for the period September 22, 2023 through March 17, 2024. So there is no dispute that at least some leave was required to allow Mrs. Brindle to recuperate. But the fact that Mrs. Brindle was physically assaulted, was physically injured, and required leave to recuperate from her injuries does not conclude our analysis. In David Smith versus Dallas Independent School District, the commissioner established there must be a continuing need for leave to not only qualify for assault leave, but also to continue to receive assault leave. So if the injury suffered by the employee does not result in any necessity for leave, and then even if the assault causing bodily injury occurred, the employee would not qualify for assault leave. The Texas Education Code authorizes school districts to investigate assault leave without limiting what materials we consider. Medical reports analyzing the injuries at issue are relevant to an assault leave investigation. While workers' compensation medical reports do not govern assault leave determination, they are relevant to evaluating assault injuries and employees' recuperation from them, and our consideration of them does not violate Texas Education Code 22.003b. Additionally, Board Policy DBB Local states that the superintendent or designee may require an employee to undergo a medical examination if information received from the employee's supervisor, or other resources indicates the employee has a physical or mental impairment that interferes with the employee's ability to perform essential job functions. The decision to seek an independent medical examination, or IME, is the district working in good faith to consider and address the assault leave claim due to conflicting doctor's reports, which the applicable statutory provision permits the district to investigate. A key factor in the denial of the reinstatement of Mrs. Brindle's assault leave effective March 18, 2024, is that multiple doctors have independently determined that Mrs. Brindle has reached maximum medical improvement, otherwise known as MMI, with respect to the physical injuries caused by the assault. The concept of MMI is critical because it signifies that the employee has recovered to the fullest extent possible from the physical injuries and is either able to return to work or is at the point where further assault leave is not necessary. Specifically in this case, 5 doctors, including a forensic psychiatrist and an orthopedic doctor, those doctors being Dr. Salvato, Dr. Brylowski, Dr. Arambula, Dr. Bells, and Dr. Atchison, have issued reports stating that in their opinion, Mrs. Brindle reached MMI on or before March 17, 2024, for the injury sustained in the assault on September 8th. Their reports clearly state that there is no additional physical conditions or injuries that would require further recovery time or additional leave. Texas Education Code 22.003b states that assault leave is specifically for recovery from physical injuries. As the reports provided show, these doctors who assessed Mrs. Brindle's physical injuries each indicated the injuries she sustained extended only to include stomach contusion, head contusion, and left forearm contusion, and these types of contusions generally resolve within days. Assault leave can be terminated if the employee is determined to be ready to return to work based on medical or other relevant documentation. If the employee no longer meets the criteria for assault leave due to recovery or other factors, the district has the right to end the leave. Since multiple physicians opined that Mrs. Brindle has reached MMI, there is no longer a physical impairment that would justify additional leave under this provision based on the original physical injury. Once MMI is reached and the employee is considered to have recovered to the maximum extent possible, and assault leave is no longer warranted, even if emotional distress remains. Under Texas Education Code 22.003b, assault leave is specifically intended for recovery from physical injuries sustained during an assault while performing the employee's duties. The statute does not extend to injuries that are psychological or emotional in nature, even if the employee claims they are a result of the assault. All of the doctors that I've referenced opined that Mrs. Brindle has recuperated from her injury sufficiently to do her job, although Mrs. Brindle argues that other doctors' reports are evidence that she cannot return to work. The administration maintains we have substantial evidence to support its decision. Mrs. Brindle's argument does not show that the doctor's reports used by the administration in their determination are invalid or otherwise cannot be considered in the investigation of her assault leave claim. Although the reinstatement of assault leave was denied, the district fully supported Mrs. Brindle return to work and considered any reasonable accommodation that Mrs. Brindle needed
2
for
minutes.
a smooth transition back. Unfortunately, the district was unable to accommodate her restrictions of no loud noises or no bright lights, as this would not be a reasonable accommodation for any employee in any position or role in the district. In conclusion, the administration followed both the provisions of the Texas Education Code 22.003b and district policy in the decision-making process and carefully reviewed the medical documentation submitted to ensure that all information was thoroughly evaluated. The district has substantial evidence to determine that Mrs. Brindle's injuries that required more time to recuperate were not physical injuries based on the student's assault. The documentation from multiple doctors clearly states that Mrs. Brindle has reached MMI, meaning that the physical injuries sustained during the assault have been addressed as fully as possible through medical treatment. We have ensured compliance with all applicable laws and are committed to supporting employees who have a need to be out due to an injury. For these reasons, the administration requests the board uphold the grievance decisions at prior levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitten. So now, board members will be allowed time to ask questions of both parties. And just a reminder that we are to ask questions and not necessarily make statements. So if you have a statement, please try to form it in the phrase of a question to get whatever answer you're looking for. Do I have any trustees who would like to go first? Either that or I can just start at one end and move down the line. Okay. All right. Okay. Ms. Villarreal.
Okay, hi, I appreciate you coming before us, but I have some serious, I was very confused as I read of course, I'm not a doctor, let me just put that, but I read a lot of conflicting reports, some that stated that you had in your past, on page 187 at the top, it says, in this case, records indicate that Ms. Brindle's treatment for depression has persisted for many years, which infers that her depression was chronic and likely consistent with a persistent depressive disorder, previously called dysmethia. Which also infers that she will likely require continued treatment to minimize her risk for relapse. Another thing that I saw in here that it said it was clinically noteworthy that Ms. Brindle experienced a couple of something or other episodes and may have very well hit her head on the floor or kitchen cabinets when she passed out. And she said the fact that she suddenly found herself bloodied and on the floor, absent to my knowledge, recall how it happened, suggests that she was unaware when she fell and did not brace herself at all before she hit the floor. Then Ms. Brindle had been taking 2 medications, trazodone and prazosin, which carry pharmacologic inhibitory actions on alpha receptors of blood vessels to reduce blood pressure. And see, what I'm trying to figure out, are you alleging that this particular event caused high blood pressure and depressive symptoms? No. I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going on with this.
I'll do some show and tell. This is all I took before the assault for anxiety and depression, control, in remission if you'll call. Since the assault, this is what I take. For PTSD, and the Prozostin you talk about is for night terrors.
But what I'm trying to understand this, because apparently from what is indicated in your medical records, which there again, I'm not a doctor, and so I'm just flying blind here, that it seems to be an ongoing thing. And then I go over here to page, I go to page 141. It says, in reasonable probability, it's my opinion that bilateral hearing loss and tinnitus cannot be attributed to the single event. Bilateral hearing loss is likely, in medical probability, age-related. So what I'm concerned about, and also then we have on page 140, it is unclear whether or not this lady has a true migraine headache or of muscular tension headaches with a degree of facet antipathy and possible occipital neuralgia. She has bilateral temporal whatever abnormalities, and she struck the left side of her face, but the findings at the TMJ are bilateral. And see, this is what I'm trying to figure out, because it just doesn't make any sense to me that if you were struck, on which side were you struck? On your head? What, with the
My
book?
left side.
Your left side? Okay, what I'm trying to figure out is how it, if you have, I could understand it if you had it on your left side, but then all of a sudden you have it bilaterally, and it just seems like
The hearing loss is bilateral. The tinnitus is on my left ear.
okay, but they're saying in here that it's, it's probably
Well, if you can read
age-related.
If you can read the hearing report, the tinnitus is definitely in my left ear. I've had a family of mosquitoes living in my left ear from the time I got knocked upside the head with the book.
Okay,
And the ENT has recommended a device with a tinnitus masker that I have been denied to even try. And today, this morning actually, day 507, I finally had an MRI for my ear, my jaw, and my cervical spine.
but it's showing on here that you had an MRI imaging of the brain did not indicate any evidence of intracranial trauma. There was some nonspecific and perhaps age-related changes, but nothing in acute nature. That's on page 138. See, this is where I'm getting, it's like so many conflicting reports, and I'm trying to figure out what was, related. I dive under houses for a living. I'm 61 years old, okay? And I hit my head on stuff all the time. And, nothing to me, and with all the conflicting reports and all the, I just don't even know where to go with this. I'm looking at this, and of course, you're asking a layperson to look at, medical records.
Well, I will tell you that Dr. R.M. Beulah and Dr. Bales and Dr. Atchison were selected and paid for by the district. And Dr. R.M. Beulah is a forensic psychiatrist who is a paid trial attorney for, he's paid by trial attorneys to be a witness. And he knew very little about education. Because I have stuff that he omitted from that report that really are spot on to how I have reacted when I've tried to go back to the classroom. I mean, I have a physical response when I step into a classroom now. And none of that, we talked about that. It was a 2.5-hour session. None of that is in his report. But I have the transcript if you'd ever like to read it.
Okay. There was one more thing at the very front. Sorry, I was, going through all that. I just trying to make sense of all this stuff because, like I said, I'm not in any way, shape, or form medical.
These are only 2 of my books. I left my library at home.
And see, we come over here on page 121, and it starts calling about, this is about a, some kind of a reformatted images were performed for interpretation. Findings, no acute facial fracture was identified. The paranasal sinuses are clear. The bilateral globes are intact. And the retrotubular soft tissues are within normal limits. Metallic streaking artifact from dentures limits the evaluation of the surrounding soft tissue. And it says no acute facial fracture identified. Can somebody give me the definition of a concussion?
This was from when I fell in June.
Okay.
They did that to make sure I didn't break my nose or had a concussion then.
Okay, so you have multiple instances of issues with either falling
No.
or,
That was the one and only time, and I've never lost consciousness in my life.
okay.
Diane, Ms. Vianel, you fell in June of what year?
This year.
24. Okay, so it was after.
And it was
Um.
from taking all this medication, my blood pressure would drop. So I was admitted to cardiology for 3 days and monitored. And the cardiologist said, this is malpractice with all this medication you're on. And he just went down and he said, I will not release you. I will release you to your quarterback. Your primary physician approves all medication. And cut it back, and we cut it back, and we cut it back. And I take the minimum of what I can take.
Let me ask you a question. Are these medications, are they prescribed by various doctors or is it just
Yes.
one?
No.
See, have you taken your medications to your doctor and have, everything?
But see, there's this whole workman's comp deal where you can only talk to your workman's comp doc. You can't talk to your primary.
See, I'm just concerned, my husband was very ill for a very long time before he passed. And he had multiple different doctors giving multiple different drugs. Matter of fact, when he finally passed in September of 2017, I literally had 4 giant garbage bags worth of medications in my house that I had to take back to the pharmacy. So what I'm concerned about is some of these symptoms, and there again, I'm not a physician. I'm concerned that some of these symptoms may be that some of these, these pills that you're taking may be, clashing with each other.
No, my doctor, my primary is making sure that doesn't happen now. And I was taking Topamax for the migraine and sumatriptan when it got really bad, but I can't take that anymore because my blood pressure just drops. So they're trying to figure out something else to take. Right. Oh. Yes, you're right, Tom. The primary doctor's working on that.
Okay.
Because she knows all the medications that I take.
She's controlling all the medications, the primary doctor.
And do you shop at one pharmacy or multiple?
Yes.
One pharmacy?
Yeah, because then they can
Right,
flag interactions as well.
okay. All right, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Villarreal.
Thank you.
Ms. Landry, you have some questions?
I do, thank you. And I'm so sorry for what happened to you. It breaks my heart.
Mine too.
The children, so sad. In the transcript of the level 2 hearing, there was discussion about the workman's comp case still being active. Is that still active today?
Correct.
It is still active, okay. And you mentioned that you had an MRI done today.
I had 2 MRIs done today and a CT.
Okay, and that's all related. Was that through the workman's comp
Yes.
case? The doctor approved through the case
The
for,
Athens and NEISD for the last 6 or 7 months has been denying them. They've been denying everything since March, except for after I fell in the hospital, they approved physical therapy. But, my doctor resubmits saying, no, you've got to do it. And so another independent doctor from the state looks at all of it and said, absolutely, there's too much unexplained weight loss, there's just too much, you've got to go ahead and do it. And then with this, R.M. Beulah being a forensic psychiatrist and having no connection with workman's comp, no certification with workman's comp, and he was paid for by the district, that, give me a minute.
and while you think about that, I just had one more question. And maybe, Mr. Cummings, you can answer this. Dr. Huffel had indicated that the restrictions or inability to return to work was indefinite. Is there an expected time, or is there an effort to reach the ability to return, with her statement being that it's indefinite? It sounds to me like she's not expecting you to be capable of returning. Am I reading into that wrong?
But it's more needing the tinnitus masker and possibly a hearing aid that would help with my balance, because I'm so, not steady on my feet.
Yeah.
That should help too, but.
So, I didn't see anything about the masker or the hearing aid within the
Well,
reporting.
Since I do have a workman's comp attorney, and she's never shown up at any of these grievances because she considers it conflict. And so saying that's probably the end goal. And the next step is the final step, which is it's not a benefits review, it's in front of a judge, and I'm really looking forward to that, because anytime I've been in front of the commissioner, there's just no shenanigans. It's like black and white.
Okay, thank you so much.
If I could just clarify on that, it's Ms. Brendel's intent to return to teaching. The indefinite is you can't predict the future, but it's her intent to return back to the classroom.
Right, and my experience is generally if a physician expects recovery, they give you a timeline. So, and when she put in indefinitely, it made me question whether or not there is an expectation of being recovered sufficiently to return.
There's a lot of physical damage, so I imagine it's hard to juggle them all.
And I do have PTSD. I mean, when I tried to go back to Windcrest, when I tried to walk in the classroom, I have a physical response.
And I noted in one of your reports that one of the physicians felt that being more involved and more in the classroom would help calm those nerves
Yeah, I know.
and get you back on.
I can get there, but I need help to get there.
Okay.
You know, 9/11, you prepared yourself to keep your kids safe. And you put the sign out that said, we're on the playground. And you got them all in and you hit them and you know, felt like you could keep them safe. But now, that kind of danger's coming into your classroom. I mean, he ran up on me, knocked me in the head, and my job is to de-escalate. Calm him down, de-escalate, and get the other kids safely out of harm's way. We share a bathroom, go to Miss Wolf's room. And I kept thinking the next couple weeks, I'm like, what is wrong with me? I jumped, and I thought, I'm afraid to be in my own classroom. And if you look at that behavior log, something really bad's gonna happen to those kids.
Ms. Landry, any other questions? Can you hold, because I think Ms. Cox had some that she wanted to ask.
I have a couple questions for each of you. I'll start with Ms. Witten. I didn't catch the name of the case, but you mentioned the first one was Harper and then the second one, and it's the case. Will you reread what you said there about that case determined there must be a continuing need for assault?
Yes, it was David Smith versus Dallas Independent School District, where the commissioner established there must be a continuing need for leave to not only qualify for assault leave, but also to continue to receive assault leave.
Okay, thank you. My second question is there typically an assault review committee meeting? Are those usually held? And if so, why was not one not held?
I will actually call Mr. Gracia up. I will answer and then, of course, defer to him for further information.
Okay, thank
So
you.
the statute does not require that an assault leave committee is established. However, the district in April of 2022 decided just to form a committee. In this case, the committee did not need to convene based on the fact that when Mrs. Brindle initially submitted her request, she was granted assault leave. So the committee, based on the determination, did not convene. Since that time, we did, as noted in the grievance, advise Mr. Gracia to revisit that process, and he has determined that even on an initial request, the committee will convene in future reviews of any request for assault leave. But again, it's not required under statute and was not needed, given that they had, upon her request, granted it to her.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. My other two questions are for Ms. Brindle. First of all, I just want to say thank you very much for stepping up and being a special education teacher, because I know that
I'm
on
not,
any...
it was a general ed
Oh,
class.
okay, well, but just for your commitment to our students, so I do appreciate that. I wanted you just to speak a little bit to how you felt harassed or bullied by the district, because that is mentioned several times throughout that very long grievance report, and I just wondered if you could put some words to that about how you felt bullied or harassed by the district.
Well, I kept getting calls from different people, and I'd ask questions and I would get different answers. And it got to the point where, you know, I was already in a vulnerable state that I had to have Tom say, they can only respond to me in email, because I was getting different answers to the same question. And it just seemed there was no sense of urgency to help me. And if anything, it was like, I think we can kick the can down the road far enough and you'll just give up and go away.
Okay, thank you. My second question probably is more for Mr. Cummings. In the report, it says that, where did I put this? Oh, I just need to clarify. There was Dr. Berlowski. So were you seen, Ms. Brindle, by Dr. Berlowski?
Never.
But
I
then,
wouldn't know him if I saw him.
but it does say in our report here
Yes,
that,
that's a falsehood.
okay.
They should have never said that. I never saw him, and the very first benefits review committee we had, that was the first question asked of the NEISD workman's comp attorney. Has she been examined by him? No. Get it out of here, and that's when the commissioner said she needs to go to a designated doctor. Nobody that the district knows, nobody I know, and that's Dr. Hood. So that's the, I've seen him twice, and now I've seen him a third time, and now we're waiting for his report, because I just had the MRI today. And that should be done, and then go in front of the judge on March 7th.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Shelton?
Thank you guys for being here. I have a couple questions, and I was going to try to put them in order, so I apologize that they may be in rough draft.
That's okay.
Ms. Shiloh, what is the difference between a continuous leave of absence? You talked about she was originally on continuous leave of absence and the move to assault leave. What's the difference between the two?
While an employee is on assault leave, there are other types of leave running concurrently. So workers' comp, family medical leave, and temporary disability leave. So when an employee, when we're not able to accommodate, then they transition to a continuous leave. Based on this case being an assault, that means workers' comp and assault leave were also running concurrently at the same time.
So if she had not requested assault leave, she would have stayed on continuous leave of absence until we were able to accommodate her based on the doctor recommendation?
So workers' comp would have been in place, as well as a leave of absence, which would be family medical leave, and then if it extended past 12 weeks, would transition to temporary disability leave, and that's 180 days max for all of those leaves.
We don't have long-term disability?
So we have temporary disability that's required by the state, as far as if the employee through like their insurance applies
Right,
for
right.
disability, that's, yeah.
No, I'm asking. We don't have short and long-term disability?
So no, we just have
We don't.
temporary disability
Okay.
unless the employee applies for
Got it.
disability. There's disability insurance, so that's, again, through their insurance elections.
Okay. For either of you, is Ms. Brindell currently on our payroll?
I haven't been paid since March.
17th or 2024?
March 23.
24.
No,
Mrs.
23.
Mrs. Brindle is an active employee presently still, and her last day in a paid status was April 2nd of 2024.
April 2nd?
Yes.
And what about her health insurance?
I'm paying my COBRA.
Okay.
When was I paid? April 2nd?
You had leave that continued you on through that time frame.
So you just use all her days to keep her paid?
Yes, because
as
she
long as
remained
possible.
out. She was still accruing leave while she was on assault leave. Again, she was paid 100% of her pay that full duration of time, September 22nd through March 17th. And then she had leave available to her, and she was on a leave to extend her till April 2nd.
Okay. Are we saying that there is no job in the district that can accommodate her based on her injuries?
There's no job in the district that can accommodate her restrictions of no loud noise or no bright lights.
And so, and I'm asking for, so she's doing her job, she gets assaulted by one of our students, and there's nothing we can do to keep her employed? There's no job that we can find to keep her employed?
Not based on the current restrictions that were presented, that we were unable to accommodate in her role as a teacher or in any other role within the district. That
So the
exists.
best she can hope for, let's assume we're not in a grievance. This happens, she's hurt. we can't accommodate her, the best she can hope for is what?
Well, through the process of continuing to seek medical treatment, that she would recuperate through that time frame. Depending on when a doctor indicates those restrictions last through, it would be that we would offer her whatever leave is available to her to remain out to continue to seek treatment. But beyond that, with those restrictions in place, we do not have any position available that we could reassign Mrs. Brindle to.
So the best she could hope for is 180 days. And then she'd have to be terminated?
If she qualified for assault leave, that's up to 2 years of assault leave.
And we're saying she no longer qualifies based on Dr.
On the various
Atkins
doctors.
and Bales. And so did you see each of those doctors? I heard you say you saw Dr. Hood. Did you see Dr.
Dr. Hood is from the independent doctor from the state.
Okay. And Dr. Bales, Dr. Atson, and Dr.
They were selected and paid for by the district.
And did you see each of those doctors?
Yes.
Why did we choose 3 different doctors for her to see?
The district chose 2 through board policy DBB.
Okay.
Which, because, as noted, there was conflicting reports.
Right.
And so we do have the ability through that policy to select independent medical examinations to be done by doctors. And so those were the 2 doctors that we selected based on the injuries that were reported.
Who's the 3rd doctor then?
So Dr. Atchison is actually a post-designated doctor through workers' compensation.
Oh, voila. Okay. Are you still on workers' compensation?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm not paid. I still see a workman's compensation doctor.
But you're not paid?
No.
Okay. Do we have, anything for psychological support?
So the district does offer through the Employee Assistance Program, Comp Psych, resources for our employees, and then through the process, any doctors that they're referred to.
I was initially approved for, referred by Dr. Kaylee Sabato for psychological counseling, and after 6 sessions was denied.
Because?
They didn't, they got the information they needed for their stuff. And then, my doctors have been continuously saying, you know, she's got to have this, she's got to have this, denial, denial, denial.
Mr. Cummings, you stated that the district ignored, and I was trying to write it down, I didn't get the whole thing, a state requirement to reinstate her. What was that? What agency, and what were the parameters that they were expected for her return? And how did the district ignore? What did that mean? What does that look like? I was trying to write down word for word. You said the district ignored a state requirement, and I assume state, to reinstate her. And my question was, what was the agency and what were the parameters? It was part of what you. Okay. Okay, that's okay.
I reserve the right to find it.
Okay, no problem. No problem. Do you see yourself back in the classroom?
I really hope so, because that's work that feeds my soul. And I'm very good at what I do, and y'all should want me back there too.
So, what's keeping you from going back to the classroom?
I cannot walk into a classroom without having a panic attack right now. I went in to clean out my classroom. And my daughter had to keep the door open because I had to go outside and throw up. And I know that'll get better,
So
but I need the help.
what does help look like?
Help looks like, I mean, there's so much you can do for PTSD, but you can't do it by yourself.
So help me with what does help look like?
Help says when my doctor says she needs to go to, you know, there's different kinds of therapies that you can have,
Mm-hmm.
you can do. Get it for, and it comes back denied.
So is that your COBRA that's denying it? Because,
It's workman's comp.
so the issue is more with workman's comp
Well,
than with the
but
district.
I can't live like this. I can't be in a soft food diet for the rest of my life. So I'm gonna have to start using my own insurance.
If you know anything about me, you know that I'm struggling right now. And I'm really looking for you to give me some really great insight into how we help you. Because I'm hearing, and I'm very, you see, I'm not looking at Mr. Byer, because this is not a question. But I'm hearing two different things. And
I
so,
do have, early on, when I was doing all the workman's comp stuff, and my workman's comp paperwork from the district was incomplete because it didn't include 5 other witness statements that, you know, were in it. It just had mine and, but I guess that was enough. So I, with my counselor, filled out a, victims of crime thing. And they did their own independent investigation on their own. And just with the NEISD police report and my statement, they identified me as a victim of crime.
yeah. And it's obvious, right, by what we read. What I want to just understand before we go back into the back is what you need and how we help you get what you need so you can get back into the classroom and educate, if that's what you want. If being in the classroom with our students, educating them is what you want, how do we help you get there? And how do we help you get there? And if what you need is therapy, you've told us that you have COBRA and insurance, you know, is it a matter of Ms. Shyla giving us resources to know where those
That's gonna
clinics?
require me to pay for it.
Okay,
Yeah, I forget who, somebody had mentioned the bullying, that I've mentioned that several times, and that is a big problem. The first thing is, there has been no feeling by Ms. Brendel that the district cares, period. There is no caring. There is no how can we help you. The second thing is, right after she asked for assault leave, she had it for a very short time, and then all of a sudden, her pay and health benefits were cut. Just out of the blue. There was no counseling to go into it. If that was literally, if it was really legitimate, there should have been a counseling period. You know, this is our concern, blah, 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 here's what we can do and here's what we can't do. It was just, no, you're off. And then there has been no rest in terms of the fight back and forth. Go see this doctor, go see that doctor, go see a psychiatrist, go see this one again, and we don't like this report. Dr. Karashi has been totally consistent throughout the whole thing. and you can see his several reports. There's been denial that these are physical injuries. A concussion is a physical injury. When a football player goes into the concussion tent, he's not going in to see a psychiatrist. He's going in to see a doctor, physical doctor.
Do you currently have a concussion? Do you still have a concussion, Ms. Brindle?
And a concussion can be intermittent is the key.
Yes.
Now, I have boys, I mean, and a girl. We're all athletes at Reagan, and two of them got knocked in the head. And immediately there was concussion protocol. Why don't we have that in school?
Ms. Shiloh, what is our protocol for assault leave? Are we looking every 3 months? How often does the person have to check in with a doctor's note? Why is it that after 6 months, is it every 6 weeks they're checking in? Is it they have to see a doctor? What's that protocol like?
That's going to be based on the doctor. So the doctor, upon seeing her, will determine when the next visit will be,
Okay.
and then make referrals to any other doctor that they would advise that she needs to also see.
Is it our policy and our tradition that we would, when someone is out, that we're calling them and asking what they need? Or is it our protocol that when someone's out, we leave them alone because they're out?
While someone's out, we try to respect the time that they need to recover and recuperate, so there is not, unless needed, contact that is made. In the times that contact is made, it might be, in this case, to provide additional information or clarification.
Okay. Ms. Merdell, I'll leave it at this question so my colleagues can ask their questions. Tell me, what is it that you want? What is it that you want from us, and how does that get you back into the classroom?
Well, I want a basic standard of care to heal. And that requires getting the services I need from workman's comp, instead of being denied and denied and denied. And I think at this March 7th, there's no more shenanigans. You can't throw in anything else, because this commissioner is spot on. And he'll just call it all out.
Do we control her workman's comp?
No, that's a separate process that she is appealing. So that is something that she is going through that process and avenue for at this present time.
So that's not something that we can do?
Through this grievance, we are strictly looking at the assault leave and her qualifying for that beyond the date of March 17, 2024. So although,
But I
again,
will have to say, elements of this grievance has shown up in my workman's comp case.
Okay.
And my workman's comp attorney has never been here and considers it to be really unethical.
Okay. Thank you.
Just one other point on that. There's an assault case and there's the workers' comp case. They're separate. The assault leave does not depend on a workers' comp vote, yes or no. It stands by itself.
Thank you, Ms. Sheldon. One second, I know Ms. Villarreal you had a follow-up question earlier, and then Ms. Landry, I'll get to you.
Okay, I just have a question, and that you brought something up. I believe it was when you wrote your initial, or when you read your initial statement, that you said that somebody had offered to take the child out of the classroom, and you said no? Was I hearing something, or what would?
No, I could have done, I ended up doing a chapter 37 to have him removed from the room in the end. Yes, after the assault. But I started keeping a behavior log on him the first day of school, because from the reactions of the other kids in the classroom to his behavior, and I had other kids' serious behaviors in my room as well. The team lead was out on maternity leave. The other teacher, it was her first year, and the other teacher was her second year. And really, those students are my passion. I mean, you need to give them a community, a place where they belong. And I knew the very first day, if you look at the law, that it just was not going to be a good fit for him. And the first thing you have to do is all the paperwork. So I knew I was going to have at least 6 weeks of behavior logs before hopefully you could get a behavior specialist in to look at him. And if everything went right, you could have him placed by Christmas. But
Why does it take so long if you have a situation where there's a child that is creating havoc in your classroom? Why does it take 6 weeks of behavior logs, in order to get some help?
above my pay grade.
I'm asking you guys, why does it take us 6 weeks of behavior logs for us to remove a child from a classroom that's problematic? Help me understand this.
Well, it's really to get them to the next step, to have, maybe somebody come in and look at their behavior, and then they give you advice on what to do.
Okay.
And in this case, the student was a special education student, and we can't summarily remove a child without going through the proper procedures and having, in this case, an art committee review, and there's other steps in that process as well.
If we have a child, I'm just trying to understand the process because I've never been a teacher. I've never experienced this. If we have a child that's an issue that is special ed, is there a way to accelerate the process in order for us to prevent stuff like this going forward?
Good evening.
Hi.
I can definitely respond to that question, and it's a very good question, and one that I do believe campuses across our district have worked very hard to develop a system for. So in this particular situation, this is a student who actually did have a behavior facilitator in the past, and he exceeded all expectations in working with that behavior facilitator. So when he started the following school year, with any student, they will often need a reset. And so we became aware very quickly that he would need some additional support through a behavior facilitator, which he had worked with the year prior. And we actually, within the first 2 weeks of school, did ask for that behavior facilitator to come out. There are times that 6 weeks of documentation may be necessary, but it is very dependent on the child. And so to say a blanket statement of, we need 6 weeks of documentation, that's not always accurate. There are different systems in place, on campuses that allow for us to really determine what the child's needs are and what those supports look like. And we take those into account on an individual basis. And so without going into too much detail on the systems, there are quite a few systems depending on what the child's needs are. So it is one of those pieces where we want to make sure that we are providing every child the opportunity to have the least restrictive environment, and that is very specific to special education students as well. But in this situation, we did follow the process as well of coming to an ARD meeting to determine if there was additional support that was necessary.
Well, we failed somewhere because this happened.
Let's keep the subjective comments
mean-
off the record. Do you have any other questions to follow up with?
Yeah, I actually have a question for you. What was the deciding factor to deny this, the extension on the assault?
So based on the receipt of Dr. Borlowski's report, the peer review report, and then following that, Dr. Salvato did complete documentation that Mrs. Brindle was cleared to return to work with no restrictions as of March 21st, 2024. So that was the initial receipt of information that determined that her assault leave ended. That was received by the Risk Management Department and communicated to our office.
That's the report that needs to be ignored. I never saw that doctor. And Dr. Salvato, I was in her office on the 21st. I had an appointment with her, met with her, finished my appointment, had set the appointment for April 21st, my next appointment. We went to check out, and the girl at the checkout said they want you on the phone to Dr. Salvato. And she came back and she said, I can't see you anymore. The insurance company says as of the 18th, I can't see you. She said, but you have the right to request a change of doctor.
Now, was that workman's comp that gave you that verdict? Okay.
No, it was the insurance company. It wasn't her. She was told by the insurance company, you have to stop seeing her.
Just wanted to expand further, if I may. So that was the initial information that was received, and then thereafter, we did have further evaluations through the independent medical examinations that provided additional information to support that decision. So we looked at all relevant medical documentation to determine that the assault leave, the fact that it was ended was the appropriate decision.
Thank you.
Mrs. Landry?
Okay, sorry, the more I hear, the more questions I have. So my question for you, Ms. Brindle, the accommodations that we saw and the physical accommodations for the doctor's report were no bright lights and no loud noises. Is there a potential for hearing and vision protection that would help you?
Well, I'm hoping with the hearing device that might help. And now Dr. Hood has diagnosed it as a cervical sprain. So maybe to get that corrected may help. That was maybe what was causing my headaches.
Is there some temporary, like sunglasses and hearing protection?
I wear sunglasses a lot, and the hearing device should help. I guess it's wicked. I mean, I guess it's supposed to be pretty cool. Has a tinnitus masker and headphones. I don't know what it is.
I need to know more about that, but
I know, but I'd
for
like to
temporary in a
try.
classroom
Right.
without,
Right.
like, my husband goes to gun ranges and he's got this
Yeah,
hearing
well, and
protection.
One
Is that,
of the doctors I got a second opinion from was a pilot for a lot of years, and he has a tinnitus masker. And he said, and the thing of it is, there's so many things that I can try that I've been denied to try, so I don't know.
so, and I'm talking about over-the-counter, just basic purchase?
Oh, I've done the mouth guard for the TMJ and my sliding jaw.
But to get you back in the classroom,
Yeah,
I know they
right.
sell the hearing devices that you can
Right.
use to drown out the loud noises and only pick up the sounds that you would normally want to hear. I guess I don't know how that works, but, and then, like sunglasses, would that accommodate you sufficiently to get back in the classroom?
But really with the amount, I mean, the key is coming off all this medication.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's just not who I am.
And then, I hate to ask this question, but, I apologize, I forgot your name, but you just mentioned that, within 2 weeks of the start of the year, we requested the behavioral specialist in the classroom for the student. It looks like to me the incident occurred within 4 weeks of the new year,
I think it was the 5th year,
the 5th week.
5th week.
So
Like a year.
how many times did the behavioral specialist visit the student?
He didn't, nobody came while I was there.
They came and they met with administration to review his prior case history. They also met with our step or redirection teacher. And then they actually did go observe the classroom one time to see if they could determine any antecedents, because again, by the end of the prior year, he was not showing any type of behavioral outbursts. They had closed out his case. So they wanted to make sure, this was really also kind of a preventative measure for several of our students. We will, depending on their needs, we know at the beginning of the year there's a transition period, so we want to be as preventative as possible. But they did come out, I believe it was that third to fourth week, because I made the request within the first two. And I personally made the request.
And it looks like in the log, Ms. Brindle called for support on August 14th and August 16th and August 17th and August 18th and August 22nd. And so within that time frame, the behavioral specialist wasn't able to identify?
So the behavior specialist, it's one of those situations where it also depends on what the calls are. We have a system in place at school for why calls are made. But the behavior interventionist was requested 2 weeks in, and so the dates that you're mentioning were prior to the behavior specialist coming out. But we do have a system on our campus that allows for support to go into the classroom, and if necessary, the student has, depending on the student, they have available environments that they can go into for cool down or those types of situations.
And so we just, could this have been prevented, is I guess the bottom line for my question.
I think that we do everything in our power. When you ask if things can be prevented, we put everything in place. And for me to sit here and say that a situation can be prevented 100% of the time, I don't know how to respond to that. But what I can say is that we do have systems in place, and this student right now is very, very successful in a general education classroom. And so it is one of those situations where we are very confident in how we approach situations with students, but nothing is ever going to be 100% guaranteed. And so I do believe he did have supports. He had a very good relationship with our redirection support teacher who came in and supported him quite a bit. But in general, we do have systems in place to support our students who have more challenging situations.
And so some of these documented sessions, when did he start? Well, and I know this is more than a year ago, so the last 2 years he's been very successful in a general education classroom?
So this happened September 8th, I believe, and in a time frame, we came to ART and we determined that we would, based on several things, including working with the behavior facilitator, that we would add additional support. And so through that, he has integrated, he's kind of gone back and forth, and I don't want to go into too much detail.
Right.
But there were things that were put in place for him that were very successful, where he's been able to be in a general education classroom. Some of those things were outside of our control as well.
Okay. Thank you. And then my last question, Ms. Shyla, with the contacts to determine follow-up and information, are those logged whenever somebody reaches out to Ms. Brindle for more information or follow-up? Do we log those contacts?
I can respond on behalf of the Human Resources Department. I know I keep a log in making those contacts, and I know the leave office, when they reached out, do keep a log of those. As far as like the workers' comp, folks reaching out, I don't know what logs they maintain, and I would have to inquire with Mr. Gracia if he kept a log of his contacts.
Good evening. So our third-party administrator, Athens, has very meticulous records about when they make contact with the employee, Ms. Brindle in this case. From our office, we have generally very limited times when we would reach out to her directly. Most of those times it would be done through our third-party administrator.
And do we know how many efforts were made to reach out to Ms. Brindle for more information or direction or any, and it sounds like there's at least 3 different groups that would have to reach out, or 4 if you count workman's comp.
So I know from the Human Resources Department, the first time that I contacted Mrs. Brindle was based on an inquiry that she made to a number of parties, so that was an attempt to respond to that. And then after, there were 2 other instances where I was part of a conversation with her, but she also had requested that communication all go through electronic means, so at some point, that was the only method of communication that we had with her.
Okay, so prior to electronic communication, there were 3 phone calls made from your office.
At least 3 from me, and I know at least 1.
I know that me and members of my staff, the Director of Risk Management, the Assistant Director of Workers' Comp, attempted to contact Ms. Brindle and spoke with her over the phone after receiving information from Athens saying that she had many questions about the process. So we reached out to her trying to offer ourselves to answer any questions that she might have about the process. And at that point, she was not able to go through or did not want to go through with the call because she felt like we were ambushing her, or that we were, she felt uncomfortable with the call
I had a
at that time.
panic attack on the phone.
Was your office making calls to answer questions or to ask and request information?
Completely to answer any questions that she had about the process, which had been conveyed to our Athens office as well, who said that she had questions about the process, so we attempted to make contact with her to try and answer any of those questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. Ms. Chigi, do you have any questions?
Well, and first I want to say it's hard to be a teacher. I know it is, and I know we have students that are challenging. So I apologize for all that you have gone through, and I thank
They're
Mrs.
usually my favorite.
Well, I also feel like a lot has been done to attempt to remediate this. I understand you have a conflict with some of the things that doctors have said. Do you agree that you had anxiety and depression prior to this happening?
You know, in the most generic sense, and I wish I could tell you more, but it would jeopardize my workman's comp case. And all I can say is, this is it. This is all I took.
And what is that? What does that address?
It's certainly, it's anxiety and depression.
Okay. So that was
Like a
prior to.
maintenance stove.
Okay.
That's it. And now I have stuff for night terrors. I
Yeah.
have stuff, I mean, it's ridiculous.
And do you think so many medications might contribute to some of that, or not at all?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Because I've tried not taking the Prazosin, and I have horrible night terrors. And just makes me angry more than anything.
Okay, thank you. So I want to go back to the classroom a little bit. You're a special ed classroom or a general ed?
General ed.
General ed. So there were general ed students in the room. I'm kind of would like a feel for the classroom. How many students were in the
I
class?
had about 22 students, and, you know, at different levels, academically, behavior, well, you know, autistic, whatever. I had probably 10 or 11 kids that were special needs.
In the class of 22?
Right.
Okay, and so then there were support staff in the room?
There were support staff that would come in to like co-teach.
But when this episode happened?
No.
No, okay. And then I think I understand that this student is progressing, doing well? Okay. So you're, and I think once a teacher, always a teacher. You love those kids and you want to be there. And I understand that and I respect that. The bright lights, I mean, I can understand how that's going to be very hard to accommodate. How do you live daily? Do you grocery shop? Do you, how are you able to work with that?
Classes, well, I don't drive. I mean,
You don't drive?
I Uber everywhere
Okay. That was the question I had.
unless my family can drive me. I have groceries delivered, or one of the kids or my husband picks it up, or
Okay, that definitely was a question I had. And I don't know that this is a question or a statement, it needs to be a question, right? It feels like there's a perception between them doing their job by making these phone calls and your perception that it was harassment. And I think, Mrs. Winton, you would say many of those phone calls absolutely had to be made. You couldn't, is that correct?
Yes, and because the process can be complicated and you're dealing with various contacts from different departments, the efforts were made also to provide some clarification, because electronic communication, I mean, there's a lot of detail, and so whenever someone is at a point in time being told that one type of leave is ending, another is changing and transitioning to a different, we wanted to provide some context to that and some explanation. So understandably, the news was, news that unfortunately Ms. Brindle was concerned hearing, but again, it was in every attempt to explain and support her and explain that to her.
Okay. Okay, I'm good.
Thank you, Ms. Chigi. Ms. Thompson, questions?
Hi, thank you for being here. I have, like Ms. Shelton, I have like a rough draft over here. One of the things I was curious about was you had the 4 independent medical examinations, Dr. Hood, Dr. Bales, Dr. Atchison, and Dr. Arambula. Do you understand the reason that the district had to have those independent medical examinations because of the conflicting reports? Do you understand that?
Dr. Hood is the truly independent doctor that was assigned by the state commissioner.
Okay, so,
But the other ones were chosen and paid for by the district.
okay, so Ms. Witten, how did we choose Dr. Bales, Dr. Atchison, and Dr. Arambula?
So for part of that, I'm going to ask Mr. Gracia to come up, because Dr. Atchison is a post-designated doctor. So that was someone that the district did not specifically choose. So if you can
Okay.
first answer that.
Correct. So Dr. Atchison is assigned as a designated doctor, are assigned by the commission, as well as Dr. Hood. Dr. Arambula and Dr. Bales were recommendations that we received through our workers' comp TPA that understood that. Now, Dr. Arambula is not affiliated with any kind of the Division of Workers' Compensation. He is a forensic psychiatrist, and there are not many of those that could be able to conduct those types of evaluations. So we reached out to them independently outside of the workers' comp claim and asked them to do this evaluation, as Ms. Witten mentioned, as part of our board policy allows us to do that, just to be able to get, again, somebody from the outside to try to do the exam and provide an objective opinion on where we are and whether or not the questions that we had regarding the physical elements of the original injury still existed, and that's why we chose those and why we engaged their services.
So, Ms. Brindle, why do you feel like Dr. Arambula is, I don't know if I'm saying that right, guys, I'm sorry.
That's correct.
Why do you feel like, I guess all 3 of these doctors were probably paid by the district. Why do you in particular feel like he, I read the report, but why do you feel like he was not qualified or?
Well, he's a forensic psychiatrist, doesn't know much about education.
In what regard? What do you mean?
I mean, if he really wanted to know about a teacher or a student's or student's behavior, I don't think I would have chosen a forensic psychiatrist who is a paid witness used by trial attorneys.
Okay.
And we sat for 2.5 hours and I recorded everything.
Right.
And what he chose to leave out is almost malpractice.
Yes, I read your response. Out of, like, this is just a thought. I myself have been cussed at and had scissors thrown at me too. How did you know to file a Chapter 37? Because honestly, as a classroom teacher, I've never known
Well,
this.
I taught it in SAISD, and sometimes the quickest way to remove a disruptive student is through a 37. I had a very experienced team and a very serious behavior problem. And we knew by the time we did all the paperwork to get him through, the year was going to be over and somebody was going to be hurt. So the teacher who had him did a Chapter 37, and then I got him. I took him 2 weeks, Chapter 37 to the teacher next door to me. She had him for 2 weeks. She did a Chapter 37 to the 4th teacher, and then they have to find a place for him.
So the Chapter 37 was filed in that case to be a quicker response than going through the RTI process.
Right. But because it was dire, he was really going to hurt somebody.
Okay, so that was the first Chapter 37, and this is,
And that's the only other one I've done.
okay.
This is the second one I've done. I don't take that lightly, and Dr. Arlenview had no concept of what a Chapter 37 was.
Right, right.
He's like,
I'll-
Oprah, you
well-
get a 37.
Ask Human Resources, how often is it in our district that we have teachers filing Chapter 37s to remove students from classrooms?
I'm unable to answer that question as those don't come through our department, so I'm not aware of the number that have been filed for the district.
Okay, what department does that go through?
Well, it's through the campuses, you know,
Okay.
that the employee files it,
Okay,
so directly with the campus principal when they submit it.
My answer? I believe People Personnel Service would probably be the department that would collect that information, but I don't have an answer for you.
okay.
On that
I just didn't know
number.
if that was something that is like common practice. Or I just can't, I mean, after 20 years, I've just never heard of it. On December 7th, you went to Texas Med Clinic. There was a visit to Texas Med Clinic. And I just noted in there that there was a caseworker who went with you to the visit. Whose recommendation was it that the caseworker went with you? And who was, I mean, you don't have to share a name, I guess, but who, where was,
I think Letitia was her name. The adjuster.
the insurance adjuster from Blue Cross Blue Shield?
Athens.
Oh, from Athens, okay. Okay, yeah, I couldn't figure out
Miss-
why.
Trustee Thompson, I guess, just to elaborate, the Athens, as they work these claims, they do have the ability to assign a nurse case manager to accompany employees, especially when the claims get very complicated, to try to help understand or explain or be the go-between to talk the employee through what's happening in those claims. So that would have been a nurse case manager assigned by the Athens third-party administrator for the district.
Okay. Have you ever previously filed a workman's comp? No, never before? We talked about the assault leave review committee. And I know that you're not a fan of Dr. A's report. However, there were a lot of things in there that were noteworthy. One of the questions that I had was on page 183, that it was talking about, it was, let's see, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th paragraph on that page. It was during the discussion about the medical regimen, Ms. Brindell was taken aback that I had reviewed her medical pharmacy records, which were sent to me. She initially denied taking an antipsychotic medicine in the past, then amended the response that may have briefly explained it. So what was that medication for?
Well, I guess I can tell you here because it's gonna come, maybe I shouldn't. It was medication I took before I worked for the district, and it was prescribed for sleep.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but he makes it sound like I'm a psychotic person. I'm sure there's a million different reasons for medication.
Right.
I mean, and he had medications from years back.
Right, and that was one of the things you showed us, was that this was the current medication, and then this was the bag of medications now. But I thought that you previously suffer from diabetes, high blood pressure.
Right, this is just for PTSD and anxiety and depression. This isn't for diabetes, this isn't for,
Yeah. Okay, and I just want to make sure I'm right on this. Did this student have an IEP or 504 prior to this or after this? Prior, okay. Somebody made a statement, and I can't remember who it was now. It said a concussion can be intermittent. I would like to know more about that. I think, Mr. Cummins?
I'm not a doctor, but I've been told by doctors.
Okay.
Yes. If you look up, if you go online and find a reputable source, you will see that their intermittent does exist. That's all I can say.
Okay, and then I'm just really going to reiterate what Ms. Shelton asked is, what can we do, or what are you seeking that would resolve your stress?
well, I'm seeking to stop delaying all of my treatment and all of my requests, because when it comes down to getting in front of the commissioner, it all gets thrown away.
What do you mean, when it comes down to,
When I get in front of the commissioner, the state commissioner,
for this, what we're doing today?
it will, a lot of it will be.
The workers' comp part, not the assault leave.
Okay,
And I think, I'm not gonna say that it affects my case, it's not.
okay.
It's still ongoing, and I'm sure your workman's comp attorney will even.
Okay. I am terribly sorry about the stress, and I do know that stress can have a multitude of physical manifestations, so I sympathize with that deeply.
Can I ask a question?
I don't know.
We won't be able to answer. You can ask the question, but we
I'm like, I
won't
don't
be able
know.
to give an answer.
Okay, just something to think about. You all are change makers. Every one of you in this room are change makers. Why in the world are you not out in the streets saying, stop assaulting my teachers. You can make these changes. You can demand change. You can say, don't hurt my teachers. You know it's happening, and it's happening all the time. I promise you today, chairs were thrown in classrooms. Scissors were thrown in classrooms. Bulletin boards were pulled down. Change policy. Do whatever you have to do. You saw what was thrown in my classroom and at students. It's horrible. And we have all got to change it. We are all change makers. Instead of trying to, just keep, kicking it down the road, you irritate them enough and they'll go away, and then we'll resolve this case, and then we'll fire her. That's how it goes. And you really should be having a major buyback of teachers, because really good teachers have walked out the door.
Ms. Thompson, do you have any other questions?
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Ms. Shelton?
2 questions. One, how long have you been a teacher, Ms. Brindle?
14 years.
14 years. Okay.
I've subbed for a long time too, but
Okay. Ms. Wynn, if we were to give her retro assault leave pay, how much does that cost the district?
I don't have the ability to calculate that off the top of my head because I'd have to look at her pay because it's based on her daily rate of pay. So I'm sorry, I don't have that figure.
It's just doing the right thing.
And if the retro, does that include insurance as well? Do you know?
So while on assault
Healthcare.
leave, the employee still has their portion of the premiums they would have to pay.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from trustees?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I answer a question I didn't answer before?
Was it the one from Ms. Cox?
Yes, ma'am. Sir.
You got it.
Excuse me. I'm looking at all these women. Apologize. Yeah, on page 62, what I was referring to is that there's a commissioner order relating to a second benefit review conference. And in that one, the following issue was unresolved. And we're talking about something that happened in September of 2023. And this is dated 5/14, May 14th of last year. And they're still talking about extent of injury. And that was because in the first review conference, things were ignored and not properly done. Now, I'm also not in the workers' comp section, so I may be a little bit vague on that.
All right,
But
thanks.
That's my statement.
Thank you for the clarification. I just wanted to, I guess, go through and make sure we understand. So the 4 requests that were in the grievance, one was retroactive return to assault leave. And I guess my question is, you're talking about retroactive to the March, I guess, 17th, 18th, 2024, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then pay for all the days assault leave was denied, and I assume, does that mean the same amount of days that takes us back to the March 18th?
Yes.
Okay. And then, this has been asked a couple times, but one of the requests was support from the district. And I guess I'm unclear as to what support we are asking for. Are we asking for financial support, resource report, or support? What is that support? Because that can be a lot of different things.
Well,
And
it
if-
is a lot of different things, actually. It's showing that you actually do care, which has never been shown. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. It's a very cavalier attitude. We're going to cut your pay off, and we have to file a grievance to get it back. It's you've run out of days, or you've run out of, as Ms. Shelton was asking, the 180 days. After 6 months, no, you can't have any sort of leave. and we're cutting you out of assault leave, we're cutting off your pay, and again, no more health benefits.
And an awareness that you know this is going on.
And that this back and forth with, is it physical, is it not physical? It's just nonsense. It is physical. The concussion is physical. Having your jaw battered is physical. And that, she still has that. The ear injury is physical. The light and the noise are also physical as related to the hit. So the spirit and the intent of the assault leave, I'm actually doing my closing speech.
Well, hang on one second there. You
You were
get
looking
that.
at me
Well, so the support from the district, it sounds like it's varied things. Number 4, reinstatement of health insurance. I also assume that means reinstatement of health insurance back to, what date would that go back to?
Probably March or April of last year.
March or April of last year. Okay. So, Ms. Whitten, is there when the assault leave was, I guess, terminated, that's when all the benefits were also terminated, or was there carryover beyond that? I know you mentioned April 2nd would be the last time she was paid and.
In a paid status.
and-
I'm going to ask
Okay.
Mr. Gracia to come up, because at that point, that was her last day in a paid status, was April 2nd.
Right.
And then at that point, then she's notified of her ability to elect COBRA, if you can expand on that.
Right. So if the benefits were ended in March, then she would have been covered with her health insurance all the way to the end of the month. And then she would have been extended COBRA as an opportunity to engage those for vision, dental, and the medical. And from that point on, it would be her paying for those benefits.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Shelton?
I'm looking at the temporary pay log from Athens. Why is an attorney, why are we paying an attorney? And, because I think I misread it the first time.
My attorney,
I'm not sure whose attorney it is.
Amanda Spencer, is that what it says?
No, the law office of page 92.
Esther November.
Yes. So is this the workman's comp paying her?
No, I am. She's my workman's comp attorney. She gets 25% of what.
So that comes directly out of your check.
Oh, so this is your check and they take 25% and give it to your workman's comp attorney?
Correct. Once an employee decides to engage legal services, then we're required to, the administrator, has to carve out the percentage, whatever arrangement she has with that legal, to have those funds pay that attorney.
So they're not incremental to the district, it's you're getting $10 and she takes $2.50 of her
Right.
$10 to,
Correct. Whatever her temporary income benefits, less the 25%
Got
goes
it.
to the attorney, she gets the 75%.
okay, thank you.
Ms. Thompson? You good?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, that's all right. All right. As there does not appear to be any further questions, Mr. Cummins, Ms. Brendel, you'll now have 2 minutes to make a final statement. Ms. Thompson will be the timekeeper, and you may start whenever you are ready.
Well, first, there are two parts. There's the assault and there's the workers' comp. Strictly on the assault, the spirit and the intent says that it should be in place for Ms. Brendel for the full 2 years, if that's required. But we've already been a year and some odd months, quite a bit into it. Ms. Brendel is not enjoying life after being slammed in the head by a student who ran at her with a book that was downplayed by using the word soft cover book. It may have had a soft cover, but the size of the book and with the force that it was hit, I mean, if I hit you with this, it's going to hurt. And can cause damage, because again, as I said before, it was in the temple, ear, jaw area, and her ear was a mess. The other point is that, is it a physical injury or is it something like PTSD? And as I said before, several times, but it bears repeating, a concussion is a physical illness, a physical damage, and it can be immediate, it can be also intermittent, and y'all can look that up. Tinnitus is physical, and that's where she was hit. She doesn't have it in the right ear, she has it in the left ear, where she was hit. Her neck and spine were also affected. That probably led to severe headaches, which are, again, all of that is physical. Equilibrium is a result of a hit on the ear. Chronic dizziness, hit on the ear, possibly a concussion.
It's time.
Time?
Thank you, Mr. Cummins. The administration will now have 2 minutes to make a final statement. Ms. Witten, you may proceed when you are ready.
Thank you. While the district is sympathetic and empathetic to the points Mr. Cummings and Mrs. Brindle have made, the district has listened, acted, and acknowledged all of the medical documentation presented by Mrs. Brindle and has responded appropriately. The employee's request for reinstatement of assault leave is based on the assertion that she still suffers from physical injuries, including but not limited to concussion, tinnitus, headaches, problems with equilibrium, chronic dizziness. The fact that multiple physicians have confirmed that Mrs. Brindle has reached MMI for her physical injuries clearly supports the decision to deny reinstatement. Once MMI is reached, further assault leave based on physical injuries is no longer appropriate. The district's position is in line with both statutory language and Texas Commissioner decisions that place limits on assault leave, restricting it to physical recovery. It is for these reasons that we ask the Board of Trustees to uphold the Level 2 decision in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, executive session A, consultation with board's attorney regarding Level 3 employee grievance pursuant to Government Code Section 551.071 and 551.074. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 for consultation with the board's attorney. The time of adjournment is 7:24 p.m. board will now reconvene into open session. The time is 8:47 PM. Item 4, reconvene after executive session. A, possible action regarding Level 3 employee grievance pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. Do I have a motion from a trustee regarding the grievance?
I make the motion to uphold the administration level 2 decision.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Landry. Thank you, Ms. Villarreal, for the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 6-1. I want to thank everybody for the time here today. On behalf of the board, I do want to say that we would like the administration to continue to conduct a review of the process to ensure all communication is necessary and concise to better foster a working relationship for both employees and the department. We also would like the administration to review their assault leave committee procedures as they have, but continue to make sure that that is clear, concise, and available to all employees. And as trustees, I think we've heard you, Mrs. Brendel, and we'd like you to know that I think individually we will be voices where we can and take the time as trustees to look into some of the policies and procedures that we have control of as a board corporate. So thank you for everybody's time. And item number 5, adjournment, and the time is